so we'll have to start the discussions. And Richard Kwashiga is a member of Parliament for Qatar. And thanks for joining us as well.
Thank you very much.
Okay, how are you?
And I'm well, God's grace.
Now, let's start with the President. And we're being told that as chairperson of ECOWAS, he has a three-pronged approach to resolve the current difficulties that the region has. And as a result of that, he intends making sure that, well, the leaders would have to galvanize enough support and make sure current issues that confront countries in the sub-region like energy are adequately done right. Yeah,
clearly. First of all, one ought to commend President Mahama for being appointed as chairman of ECOWAS. I mean, clearly you must be one who has demonstrated capacity, one who has shown that indeed you have been able to manage the affairs effectively, dealing with the challenges in your own country before being, nominated to lead the whole of the sub-region. And that indeed is a confirmation of the fact that President Mahama, in spite of the numerous challenges that the nation is faced with, is doing well, and his efforts have been recognized by his peers across the West African sub-region. It is said that prophet is not honored in his own home. So back here in Ghana, people would want to, as it were, for sheer political reasons, chastise the president, chastise the ruling government. But others far afield, further afield, can see the tremendous efforts that are being made by him, especially in very turbulent and challenging times that we find ourselves as a nation. And like I had indicated, he will be looking at, working with leaders of the sub-region to ensure that the energy deficit is adequately addressed, and also, the naughty spots in the sub-region, in terms of the countries without peace, etc., all are done to resolve the disputes in those areas and build on what his predecessors have done. So we think that it's a good day, it's a good time for Ghana. We need to lift our shoulders high and feel proud that indeed we are still recognized, as the political force in the West African sub-region within these times in which we find ourselves.
There's always the issue about economic integration and the integration of the various markets in the respective countries in the sub-region that have always remained untapped. And for decades we've not had any chair or leader of ECOWAS that has been able to address that.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think that you realize that ECOWAS as a body itself has very Herculean challenges, and it wouldn't take a year for a leader, as it were, elected as chairman and resolve all these matters. The issue of one currency, one monetary zone, has also not been achieved. That still remains a dream, and I think that President Mahama obviously comes across with some fresh ideas, as it were, to really, galvanize whatever efforts that have been made by his predecessors in the realization of these aspirations. I think that the integration of our economies, is another challenge, like you mentioned. Lots of people will be quick to point to the EU, how they rapidly had integrated their economies. But we are in a different environment, considering the fact that as developing countries, the rapidity with which we can achieve some results in certain areas, like economic integration, single currency, cannot be same compared to the developed countries like Germany, France, etc.
Well, if the developed countries have achieved it, what really is a hindrance? Is it a subject of the language? Is it the subject of the lack of infrastructure? Well, and also the commitment of the leaders?
Yeah, of course, largely commitment counts. And again, you also must look at stability within the various countries, and also the economic situations in these various countries. Now, if one nation is solo and is, suffering from a civil war and all that, how do you actually integrate their economies? It may not be that very easy. You first of all have to address those challenges in those countries before you can move to the next level, and the reason for which it will be very out of place to compare ECOWAS to EU, as is the case with some people. They're trying to do this comparison, but it's like comparing apples and oranges. These countries in Europe didn't have the kind of civil strife that we have in some of our countries. Now, when you take a look at the members of the ECOWAS, the countries that you can talk of as being extremely stable is largely Ghana. I mean, even Nigeria, which is the economic hub of the region, has its own challenges with Boko Haram and etc., instability here and there. But of course, Nigeria's can't be managed. It's manageable. But if you go to other, some of the other countries, we're grappling with how to deal with a rebel situation, and the civil strife in those areas. So President Mahama faces a Herculean task, but we have a lot of confidence in him, and we know that he's up and able, as it were, to deal with these situations.
The other side of the criticism currently, and it's been on for the last 24 hours in the news media, is that, well, the president and his government, they have enormous challenges in country, and this added responsibility perhaps also will take its attention from the peculiar needs that the economy would need to be addressed on, and perhaps also digress his mindset on what needs to be done forthwith in the current fiscal year.
You see, that argument is very much similar to what was made when Kwame Nkrumah was championing the unification of Africa, or the liberation of Africa. People were like, well, we just won independence, why not focus on Ghana?
Well, you should have. Hindsight, history tells us.
No. Nkrumah did very well, the reason for which he remains, so greatly appreciated the world over, and a lot of countries owe, their liberation to Nkrumah, and they celebrate Nkrumah even till today. And you see, what are challenges? Yes, Ghana will have challenges. Every society will have challenges. A challenge-free society will no longer be exciting, because people will no longer think. There must be challenges for you to think. And you see, challenges, you cannot become a champion without facing challenges. It is through challenges that you can emerge as champions, because you have to win battles in order to be referred to as a champion. And we are in that process. Ghana obviously must win the economic war. Ghana obviously must win the war over poverty. Ghana obviously must actually win the war over mortality, death, people dying at
under 5 mortality,
and all that. You see, so, and we are seeing signs of success. These challenges are compelling us to find new antidotes and new ways of doing things. And we are inventing new approaches to tackling the problems we have day in and day out, and that gives us some degree of excitement. And you don't therefore say that because you have challenges that you are dealing with internally, you do not actually look beyond, externally, to see what challenges there are to also, as it were, address. Now, you see, if
what
Ghana...
What those responsibilities will take your
I
full
do not
attention
think so.
on pertinent or peculiar issues that confront you?
An analytic, strategic mind would always have multiple approaches to dealing with diverse situations that confront that such a person, or such an individual, or such a group of people. And I think that President Mahama has the wherewithal, and also the requisite and adequate team, as it were, to deal with these situations. And with ECOWAS, he obviously will also have, another cream of people, from the sub-region, harnessing those potentials, as it were, to really making some positive impact on the issues that confront the West African sub-region. And so, again, here in Ghana, of course, we can all attest to the fact that a lot of efforts have been made, as it were, to address the accumulated, challenges over the period that confronts us today. The challenges that we have today as a nation did not start just yesterday when President Mahama became president. These are challenges that had been, undertold on the back burner slowly over time, which we as a people collectively, did not galvanize our potentials to dealing with sincerely and frontally. And so people cannot conclusively say that, oh, because there are challenges in Ghana that he ought to deal with, he mustn't be taking up new responsibilities abroad.
So for you, is a no issue?
It's a no issue.
Okay. Another thing that came up during that very meeting or dialogue among the ECOWAS leaders is the subject of the deferment of the economic partnership agreement for additional 2 months. Now, that follows excessive pressure from civil society in country or in Ghana, as well as in countries where, in countries where we had the notable leaders, as in Nigeria. We've had some concerns also being raised in Benin, etc. Just because of the perceived overall effects on the economies in Africa if the economic partnership agreement is initialed.
Yeah, well, from my own perspective, I am not a great fan of that agreement, the EPA, which is to allow 80% of imports from Europe into our markets.
Well, also allowing a certain percentage of your exports also into their market.
But again, when you look at it, when you weigh it in the balance, it will tilt obviously against us, because we have really not come up to that point where our exports, will be able to match the imports that will flow in from the European countries.
Or because of the deficit in the balance of trade?
Exactly. And so why not we rather focus on trading amongst ourselves, African nations, AU countries, and make a greater impact, and then let our industries really grow and develop the muscles necessary before we look at such kinds of agreements. Of course, such agreements will also come with their own advantages and benefits, and if there's reason, as it were, to take off time to reflect cogently on the nitty-gritties before we take a firm decision, I think it's apt and it's appropriate.
Because technical negotiations wrapped up last month with the EU, offered a 6.5 billion euro package over the next 5 years to help ECOWAS shoulder the cost of integrating into the global economy. And all these monies, according to whoever may criticize, are supposed to be used in bolstering various sectors and various economies of the respective countries. So perhaps at the end of the period, the issue of exports and how they need to drive economies will be resolved.
Yeah, well, you see, again, oftentimes, for me, European countries, the developed world, when they come out with some palliatives or programs that, appear so good, they always have some gross disadvantage to countries like ours, underneath. And the reason for which, in spite of how glamorous and how attractive the package may look, I still have some apprehension. Yeah, I still have some apprehension as an individual. That is my position.
How is this, as a result of the consistent emergence of the Southeast Asian countries, and particularly China, especially as the type of inroads they are making in our sort of markets? I'm talking about Africa.
Yeah, you see, China, how did it start? China itself is a big market. I mean,
they internally have
a large market. So whatever they produce, sometimes they don't necessarily need to even export to other countries. Internally, they can consume the things they produce. But haven't been able to develop a capacity after focusing on their own economy. They now have the potential and ability to move, as it were, to other territories, which they're doing and doing very well, you know. But look at Ghana. I mean, we are a very small country, and you look at the other countries around us. We are not even able to really produce, you know, and penetrate those markets. Why can't we penetrate those markets first? You know, why can't Ghanaian products, you know, be on the Nigerian market? You know, why can't we create the environment for us to trade amongst ourselves first? And I think that is the biggest market that we have. And that is one of the key things that ECOWAS ought to work towards. Trading amongst ourselves effectively. You know, today we cannot say the volume of trade, I mean, amongst ECOWAS countries is appreciable. It's appreciable.
Okay. We'll have to take a short break. When we come back, we'll be having in the studio as well, Frederick Opariansa, a Member of Parliament for Suhum. And we'll be talking on a number of issues. We'll first be contributing on the subjects we've already looked at. We'll also look at how they're preparing as a party, the NPP, for their National Delegates Congress or conference that is expected to be convened in Tamale. We're taking a short break. We'll be right back. You're still watching AM Talk on the AM Show.
Charlie, I've not read it.
Well, so let's start. Okay, we're continuing the discussions now. We're not even start, but we're starting with the Suhum Member of Parliament. He's also a member of the ECOWAS Parliament, and Fred Opariansa, thanks for joining us.
Thank you and good morning.
Okay, you've been through a lot of traffic this morning. It's been already a very hellish moment for you. But we're just making commentary on the president election as the chairman of ECOWAS. And, well, the critics have been out there that he has internal problems. Now he's going to take additional responsibilities. Why don't you do your consolidation home before you look elsewhere?
Well, let me first congratulate him and the country. We should also recognize that when these positions are given to persons, it doesn't just go to their person. They get it for and on behalf of the country. When, for instance, we go to ECOWAS Parliament, yes, I'm the member representing Suhum, but once I get there, I'm talking. You're
a country person.
I'm a country person. In fact, when we
now you're
get
becoming
there,
diplomatic.
when we
because
get
I wanted
there
us to get political this morning.
Well, we will get there. When we get there, you would find it difficult to even distinguish between members from the NDC side and members from the MPP side. You are there to compete with other nations who also have interests. So don't forget that notwithstanding the challenges that we have as a nation, we are still out there competing with our neighbors and the others in the sub-region. We are competing for investors, we are competing for so many other things. So getting Ghana ahead as the chairman of the ECOWAS sub-regional group is definitely a feather in our cap, and I think for that alone we should commend the efforts that the presidency put in getting this done. That does not mean that you can wish away the challenges that we are currently having. When I was just getting into the studio, I heard my brother talk about the fact that what needs to be done in terms of expanding regional trade. If you want to engage in the regional trade, definitely as a nation, your own local issues have to be dealt with to make you attractive as a destination. We're already talking about us being worse off when it comes to trade between us and, say, the US or EU and even the Asian countries. So if we are now talking about expanding trade amongst ECOWAS countries, then if we have to lose out again on that and become net importers instead of exporters into the sub-region, then where are we going? So yes, the president has taken on this challenge, but he needs to ensure that the original challenge that was given to him at the election of 2012, he lives up to it. And there's still a lot of work to do. If there was no work to be done, I'm sure we'll not be hearing about the Minister of Finance, who is due to come to the House, hopefully this morning, to brief us on some policy measures. Clearly, things are not well at home, and I think we need to get onto the path of restoring the basis, the basis in terms of our financial base, economic base, and everything right before we take off again.
The ECOWAS leaders, following that very conferment they had over the weekend, well, they deferred the signing of the economic partnership agreement for additional 2 months. Would that make any difference at all? Particularly when the issues have been raised over the last week or two about how unbeneficial it will be to economies in the sub-region.
Well, I am not an economist, and I don't know too much about trade, but even at the ECOWAS Parliament, when issues of EPA comes up, there have been clear signs that not all is well with what is contained in that agreement. A lot of countries have raised issues. I remember a comment made by somebody from one of the countries that they heard Ghana had already gone ahead to sign this pact, and it didn't sit very well with us there. We had to do a lot of explaining at the time at the ECOWAS Parliament. I believe this is going to define the future of trade relations between the sub-region and the EU. And so, and once you sign this into a pact, it's not easy to renege on whatever promises or pledges you make in there. And so it's important that our leaders actually take their time to analyze what the effect of this would be on trade, not just now, but in the future, and not just sign us into some deal that eventually will become the worst of. And I think for that reason, it is proper that they pause at this moment to review the issues that are being raised by some of the countries and persons within various countries.
Okay. The PPP has sued government over the FQ program. Well, it's not as if it's only because it's an NDC government, but it's the state of Ghana, so to speak, the government of Ghana. In the constitution, it's stated FQ needs to be implemented over a 10-year period. The period has so far passed. But we've had forthwith various arguments and subsequently the announcement by the President, John Dramani Mahama, that by 2015-16 academic period, we're going to have a gradual start-up implementation of free SHS. Now, how does government deal with all these?
Well, it's very interesting that the PPP has decided, as it were, to take this matter to court. I haven't considered the fact that their leader, upon announcement by the President that we're going to start implementing progressively free SHS, he commended President Mahama and said that he was a pioneer of the whole idea, though it's actually something contained in our Constitution, 1993 Constitution. He claimed that he was a pioneer of the idea and that, of course, Nana Akufo-Addo stole it from him, and now the NDC has decided to implement it. And if the same party that decides to, take this whole matter to court, that, well, why are you implementing free SHS because FQ has not fully been implemented, I think it's more or less like running on both sides of your mouth. Again, the Constitution has not said that if FQ is not fully implemented, then you don't have to, as it were, start the next leg of education as prescribed by the Constitution, that is progressively implementing free SHS, or free senior higher education. So I don't see their point. I mean, clearly. We are a nation with numerous challenges, as we've been enumerating. And if there are some challenges that inhibit us from, as it were, fully implementing some aspects of the Constitution, I do not think it should be a matter of court. It should be a matter of some people taking, the government to court. Why didn't the PPP, I mean, clearly this is a party that has been metamorphosed a number of times. Park Syndrome, we know, is the embodiment of PPP. Why haven't they raised some of these issues in the past? Why now? Well, they have their reasons, but I think they've taken it to court. We'll only just await the verdict at the end of the day, but I am very confident that it's a frivolous case. They're going to lose massively. They're not going anywhere, and probably, I could imagine, they just want to be heard. They just want to be heard. And I think that's what it really is.
Mm. And now, particularly, Ms. Oparansa, do you think these are justified concerns of the PPP?
Well, I think it is right and it's about time, and not just for FQ. We make laws in Parliament. The country itself promulgated the 1992 Constitution onto itself, and yet sometimes you find the state acts in ways as if there are no laws to govern how we are governed. Take, for instance, issues concerning the releases into the various statutory funds, where you would have, the law is clear that when you collect VAT, those components that are supposed to accrue to Get Fund and to the NHIS fund are supposed to be paid in there on a monthly basis. Funds that accrue to the consolidated fund on a quarterly basis, some of they are supposed to pay a certain percentage into this Assembly's common fund. Mm. How then does it happen that every month people file their tax returns, VAT returns are filed, there's money going into the consolidated fund, and yet you would find that the government is in arrears of payments into these funds? Where do these funds go to? And what is the population waiting for? People should head to court and force the court to make pronouncements to force government to act right. Otherwise, we will continue to make these laws. I'm a member of Parliament. Mine is to sit and make laws by which things have to be done right. The enforcement of these things is through the courts. So if you see government not doing what is expected of it under the law, you have every right to proceed to court. The constitution of this country is clear that 10 years after the constitution comes into force, the FQ must have been fully implemented. And this is nothing against the NDC as a political party. And that is where I think, as we advance some of these arguments, we have to begin to make the distinction. It is against the state of Ghana. The NDC, unfortunately, happens to be the government in office today. Our own party has been in power. I'm sure that is why President Kufuor saw it fit to start the F part of it at the basic level, making basic education free. Until the education is entirely free, it becomes then difficult to implement the compulsory.
But Mr. Paranza, you have to say we have to be realistic. As a country, our finances just can't support it.
Well, then why do you make that law? So we made the law unto ourselves. If we have come to the realization,
well, not to perfection, but to some appreciable level. Is that not the whole case of human living?
If we have come to the realization that we cannot live by the laws we make, nothing stops us then from changing those laws. But it is wrong for you to keep those laws on your statute books and flout them just because in the view of someone. Where do you then draw the line? The government doesn't do something right and you ask them, so looking at our situation, we don't think we'll be able to live by these laws, and that is why we are not respecting them. So it's important that if some statutes that are on our books cannot be implemented, we go through the motions, the correct motions, and then scrape them off the statute books.
Well, Mr. Kwashiga, is it not a case of not being in a position to achieve some level of perfection or absoluteness, and as a result of that, it could be on the books all right, but then its implementation would have to be undertaken in a way that is in conformity with what the various accruals are, as far as revenue is concerned, and what trickles in into the economy.
I agree with you on that score. I mean, clearly, that's what it should be. I mean, if you don't have the world without, if you don't have what it takes, as it were, to implement a particular, legislation or law, there's nothing really you can do about it. Maybe the best you could do about it is, like Paris suggested, that you review and amend. But interestingly, he talked about when they were in office and blah, blah, blah. Of course, somebody could have also gone to court at the time because they also had 8 years, and it was during their time that we should have fully achieve the FQ, but it never happened.
Well, you should have started in your first NDC administration.
No. 8 years.
From 2000,
you had the first 8 years of the 10-year
From 1995. You had the first 5 years, from 1995 to 2000.
The first 5 years, yes.
And then they had also from 2001 to 2005. So it's an evenly spread sheet.
So
at least we did the free bit of the
Oh,
basic.
no, you did nothing really.
And Nana was going to do the free bit of the secondary.
No, you see, I have been asking myself, Park Isindo, for instance, talked about, he was also going to implement free SHS, assuming that he had won the elections and became president in 2012 or 2013. Are they telling us today that they would have actually addressed the nitty-gritties of the FQ before proceeding to the free SHS that he claimed he promised? I mean, let's face facts. We have a challenge as a nation. Certain things we desire to achieve, but we may not be able to achieve them. So collectively,
so you're saying we have to be realistic?
Realistic, because yes, clearly we have economic situations and structural deficits and etc. that obviously has not allowed us to really fully achieve the FQ. But we're still there. We're still working.
But these are issues that the MPP, Mr. Perance, has said if they are in power, they will put right. Build the right structures for which we will have the needed fundamentals for the economy to remain solid. And as a result of that, in Parliament today, you expect the Finance Minister to come and do what before you?
Well, it's
well, I thought you would have allowed me to land properly, because you see, I clearly would have expected. He talked about the statutory funds not being paid promptly.
Oh, okay, you wanted to respond to that.
Yeah.
It's not part of the economy.
I would have thought
no, the economy will come. No,
as a legislator,
okay.
All this while, what stopped him from taking the matter to court? Even when he was a deputy minister and the government was in government, there were still delays. That was an infringement of the law. So, I mean, putting aside the partisanship, let's actually speak to the issues as will benefit the nation, the state, our people, devoid of all the politics.
I think when I was making the point, I actually...
And then you speak on the Finance Minister, but who will be appearing before Parliament today?
I preambled it on the fact that we have all been in government, and I was not speaking against a particular government. I made a point against the state, and it so happens that I gave just the example of the Finance Ministry. But just to help my brother's memory, indeed, when we came to power, we inherited several quarters back payment that was outstanding on DACF, for instance, which our government spread over several other quarters and did clear. At the time we were leaving office, I don't think there were any outstandings left on the books of the DACF before we left office. But indeed, we have had the Finance Minister come to Parliament in November, and then we approved his budget for him in December. One of the parameters, for instance, that the 2014 budget was premised on was the fact that the CD would depreciate in the worst case scenario up to say 2.2 to the dollar. We ended the first quarter of this year yesterday, and just yesterday bank transactions were going for between around 2.7 to the dollar. It is clear that one of your key fundamentals based on which you budgeted has slipped drastically. So expectedly your budget outcomes may not be what it is for the rest of the year, and you have the major part of the year still ahead of you. So it is foreseeable that the Finance Ministry would have to take certain measures to ensure that the country stays on course. And that is why we are eager to hear what measures they are going to put in place. Let us remember that outside of Parliament, politicians and even government ministers make all kinds of statements which you cannot strictly hold them to strict proof and responsibility of. Like what we are doing on radio here, I may give out some figures, and my brother may not have those same figures immediately and will find it difficult to challenge me, but I would have put it out there. The only place where you could really hold somebody to strict proof is in Parliament. And that is why it is important that when there is such seeming crisis, and which my words I said seeming. I've had some school of thought say there is an economic crisis, and some say there is not. I told you I'm not an economist, so I can only say that there is seeming crisis, especially when I get paid at the beginning of March, and by yesterday I was struggling to, make ends meet. So clearly there is some sort of crisis on our hands, and it is apt and proper that the Minister of Finance should offer himself. Our standing orders does allow it. The only thing is that this is not to say we are going to make some law or we are going to make a new budget. I've heard some suggest that there should have been some National Economic Forum out of which they will collate all kinds of ideas and probably then submit a revised budget for us to.
You mean all that they are saying is that the president and his government need help?
Yes, so let us hear him this morning, and we want to hear exactly how they intend to arrest the fallen cedi, how they intend to, as we speak, the IMF threshold for debt sustainability is around 60% of GDP. Ghana is around 57% already, and that is not counting the remaining 2.4 billion CDB loan from China. We've only accessed about 600 million.
That's minus that.
Minus the remaining 2.6, and then there are talks about going to the Eurobond market for another 1 billion. Clearly,
that will increase. If
your total debt stock is around $23 billion, and it is about 57% of your GDP, then if you add another,
if you say the debt, is it the public debt or?
Yes, the total
okay, the public debt. That has been debated over the last couple of days. So,
as to the quantum or the percentile?
Yes, the quantum is being. It depends on how it's being worked, and so I know that Dr. Baumia in his lecture enumerated all that. Some economists say it's around 14 billion. So. Some say 11 billion.
Yeah, thank you very much. Like you mentioned,
the finance minister is it for the politics of it? Or?
Oh, no, not necessarily
or really for the national issue?
I think that clearly we all are interested in knowing what measures are being taken as it were. We know some measures have been taken as it were to arrest the falling the cedi, and yet we still see, a downward spiral. And so it's very important that we hear from the horse's own mouth. But you see, again, the issue of debt sustainability as to whether it's 57%, I'm not too sure about that. Of course, I know...
He's talking about the threshold to GDP.
Yes.
Yeah, the World Bank is 60%, isn't it?
Yes.
And so the 57 that he mentioned, which as the current status of Ghana's, is what I'm doubtful about. Okay, but with that we'll have to verify. But again, when it comes to our debt, they talk about 23 billion. That can't be true, because at the end of the day they add even promissory notes. Okay, even the 3 billion Chinese loan that has not been fully assessed fully is added.
Well, we pay interest on.
No, but so clearly we need to actually, as it were, put them in their proper perspectives. How much is the nation's
debt
portfolio as down compared to what we are expecting that has not come to us? We must not add the two together. If you do that, then you create a certain mindset, and you will not appear to be actually giving a true picture of our situation. And that is the challenge that I have with my colleagues on the other side. They lump everything together. Those that are agreements that have actually not trickled in, all those are considered to be
well, it helps them in the politics too, and we have to be real. I mean, the politics helps in getting whoever is in office, and also shaping up the debate as far as in the public space is concerned. Now the finance minister, the finance minister, if it comes to Parliament, I know how is it a question? Somebody posed a question, a private?
No, I think it's utilizing the opportunity of ministers to make policy statements in the House, which will be open for comments without provoking debate. And
so questions will be asked.
Not
necessarily.
Comments
after his.
Yeah, you may use the opportunity to solicit some elucidation on a matter that he has touched on. Because what happens is he makes a statement, we pass commentary, and then the speaker may ask him to sum up in case he wants to respond to some of the commentary that came up.
That
so
is if he wants to.
Yes, it's not really like question time, but your comments may come.
But that doesn't serve the public any good, does it?
For
he
instance,
comes to make his comments, that's all. And then
that's the point I was making, that you can't really get much out of it.
So the national dialogue would have been better?
Yes, except it being informational. You would have gotten a sense of where government wants to go. And this will be the very formal sense of it, not just some speculative thing or some government official speaking on radio. This would be the finance minister speaking in parliament. So clearly, that is the totality of government's thinking as far as confronting the issues.
I think that clearly the finance ministers coming to parliament is very necessary, is very important. At least it takes off the apprehension and then the confusion that is out there.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of people are saying various kinds of things, but let's hear from the horse's own mouth. What is the state of the economy? What are the strategies that are being put in place, as it were, to arrest the falling CD? You know, of course, some measures like what I mentioned earlier have been put in place, but we still are not really achieving the kind of results that we expect. We're all very much concerned, you know.
Oh, you are too?
I mean, every Ghanaian should be concerned about the state of the economy. The government obviously is concerned, and the reason for which they are always thinking out of the box, as it were, to find, you know, effective and appropriate antidotes to the kind of challenges that we have. But I keep saying that in the midst of all these challenges, Ghana is still doing quite well. We are confronted with challenges that are an accumulation over a period, you know, and this government is actually confronted with a lot of weaknesses that dates back to even NDC-1 through the MPP era, etc., till where we are today. You know, and so it's necessary that we know. And
the last bit of your speech is the political part, right?
No, it's not the political part.
Now, are we in doubt about what government wants to do? And so if the finance minister comes, because I believe that he's addressed Parliament when he presented the budget. We've had the opportunity to listen to him in various public fora. Yeah. And we've had the president also make speeches in a State of the Nation address, for example. Yeah. So are we in doubt about which institution and which government agency wants to do what?
Yeah, I'm sure there is some level of apprehension, there's some level of speculation also going around. So one thing this would do for us is bring some certainty to government's plans with regard to the current state of affairs. And so for that it's very, very necessary. If not for anything at all, at least during the comments, somebody could put out the issue of the level of national debt being at 23 billion thereabouts. If it is not so, I would expect the Minister of Finance to tell us exactly what it is. Because don't forget, see, these debts get approved through Parliament. So it is not too difficult to actually, for somebody to be sitting in Parliament and keeping a tab on what it is. To say that you've approved a facility and we have not yet accessed it, so don't add it, is neither here nor there. But really, I don't think day in and day out, as the government accesses these facilities, they come back to Parliament to report that, oh, you approved a certain facility for us in 2009, and we have just started accessing it. That is not the practice.
But you know too that even with the 3 billion, the finance minister came back even during the reading of the budget, and then clearly indicated to us that this is the quantum that has been assessed.
Yes, that is why.
This is how much is left to be assessed.
That is why when
and so if you say they don't get back to us, I mean that would not.
You should understand that the structure of the 3 billion CDB facility was different. We actually approved the global
master facility,
and then there were subsidiary agreements to
access
based on which
specific
project and sectors.
With the proposals justified.
Exactly. That is why. Exactly. That is why there was the need to. But if government comes and say, I need a loan for 250 million to buy hospital equipment, and then we approve it, it never comes back to the House to say that we are now accessing it. And that is why I was clear when I was speaking earlier and said that the quantum of debt we are talking about does not include the entire 3 billion sum. It only includes the 600 million that has been accessed so far. I made that distinction. But don't get me wrong, this is not all to blame government. It is just a caution that as a nation we should be careful where we are heading. The thresholds that these Bretton Woods institutions have set are clear indicators of some danger that is pending ahead of you. As soon as you cross the threshold, what it will trigger is that a lot of institutions will no longer, and countries will no longer lend you money.
Yeah, but we've not crossed that threshold.
No, we are not. So that's why we are cautioning. Even your treasury bills, when you put them out, people will no longer
we can go on with the economy, but let's do some politics, because it's been a while I've discussed politics, and especially since I have two distinguished people. One, my old friend. I remember when that was...
I was making the initial...
Yes, that was beginning of 2000, right? You wanted to contest 2004, so you were putting this right. I didn't get the clue then.
Yes.
Yeah, right. But later I got the clue. Okay, so let's. My director has agreed to give me 3 minutes on this very subject. MPP to break up. I mean, just the issue about how you are preparing for your Congress and all. How is it going?
Well, from the indications I've gotten so far, I think things are well underway to ensure a very successful Congress in Tamale come some 11 days from today. As for the headline, MPP to break up after Congress, it is just that, just as a headline. I don't think that we are anywhere near a breakup at all.
Definitely.
You should understand that a political party, as attractive as the MPP is, having gone through polling station, constituency, regional, and electoral area coordinator, elections and all that, people will be gunning for the topmost job with all the energy and the vigor that you can expect, and that definitely will vibrate throughout the party. And political parties are just that. They are political parties. You have people coming with all kinds of interests and interest groups forming within these political parties, and there is nothing wrong with that. What I like to see is that as a party, and just like I said earlier, as a nation, we've agreed to adopt a constitution which spells out how we do everything that we are supposed to do. I think recently you heard me put out a challenge to the party's neck when they came out and said this Congress that we are going to go to, they will prefer that we have it they were going to break the whole thing up into 10 regional congresses, mini congresses. That was somebody's idea, which I'm sure probably the NEC didn't take a critical look at vis-a-vis the provisions of our constitution. I didn't raise any hell about it anyway. I just wrote a letter to NEC and CC'd the National Council. Council sat and said, yes, my position was right. There cannot be mini conferences and call it conference. There should be a single conference per our constitution.
Because you have been in the news, that's why it's good I've gotten you. I'll ask you one more question though. If the MPP, they have a very good Congress, that's good for you as well. Vibrant.
It's good for the whole nation.
Yes, really. Opposition. Even though I've heard in some quarters, according to some reports, that efforts have been made to thwart.
Thwart? By who? Efforts have been made by who to thwart what?
Well, I don't think anybody can thwart the great strides that the MPP is making. The efforts will be made, but it will not yield any result.
Yeah, I think that clearly we in the NDC very much are praying and hoping that the MPP will be successful in all its endeavors. The fact is that we know that a party in government will always need a very vibrant opposition party. They're going to continue in opposition till 2028. And so I can only wish them well.
They're going to continue in opposition
with all the efforts they put in, they will still be in opposition to
His comment will end it for AM Talk this morning. Thanks for coming through and helping us with the discussion this morning. And Fred Opariansa is a member of Parliament for Suhum. He's a member of the MPP and also a member of the ECOWAS Parliament. Thank you very much for the good job you're doing in the ECOWAS Parliament. Richard Kwashiga is also a member of Parliament for Keta, a member of the NDC as well. Oh, okay. Well, so that'll be it for AM Talk. Next, we bring you AM Biz for AM Showbiz.